Right, we'll go into the usual news and views. There's not as many this week because I've got a load of questions that I need to catch up on. And there's quite a number of pieces, op-ed pieces, and also little bits of intel here and there scattered, which will be after the next music break. Now, I pulled this piece up because this is going to be, I'm hoping, a blueprint going forward. And it involves a lady called Marcy Frost, who did not claim to have a college degree when she applied to lead the Californian Public Employees Retirement System in 2016. She did emphasise it in blue ink, writing "not degreed yet" in a box that asked her about her education. But 2 years after she got the job, she's now under fire, with a financial blogger alleging that she's mischaracterised her education in an application in a subsequent press release by implying she was further along obtaining a degree than she actually was. Now, it's raising questions among retirees who are learning for the first time that CalPERS, C-A-L-P-E-R-S, Chief Executive Officer, did not graduate from college. Now, Weber was reporting this year has already led CalPERS to oust a Chief Financial Officer, and she has dedicated readership among people who pay close attention to that particular fund. And they went on to say, "We are surprised you just assume in today's market you're going to be the CEO of the nation's largest retirement system, that you would have to have some kind of degree." This is according to Tim Behrens, president of the California State Retirees. I personally like the response of the CalPERS Board of Administration Vice President Rob Fechner. Quite frankly, it's not about a piece of paper, it's about somebody who can do a job. She presented herself as the best person who could do the job in that interview. And that is something that people need to take on board. It's just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean to say that they're any better than anybody else who hasn't got the paper. It just isn't. Use your intuition. You can generally tell whether people are going to be suitable for the job or not, far more than what is on a piece of paper. And most of it is faked anyway now. Reports has come out that won't surprise many, but it may surprise some. Israel is secretly supporting the Syrian rebels operating near its occupied Golan Heights territory. They are providing money, food, fuel and medical supplies, according to the fighters who claim to have received the aid. Now, Israel has previously treated wounded Syrian rebels in its hospitals, but interviews with rebels conducted suggest that Israel is directly supporting opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the 6-year-long civil war. Now, Israel is opposed to the rule of Assad and his forces, and it also sees militants belonging to the Lebanese militia Hezbollah, who support Assad's regime, as posing a threat to its security on the Golan Heights border. Now, the payments are aimed at creating a buffer of friendly forces on the Golan Heights border to keep their foes at a distance. And it says that the Israeli military has direct communications with rebel commanders and is providing funds to them that pay for their salaries, ammunitions and also weapons. Now, these payments began in 2013 under the former Defence Minister Moshe Yaalon and continue to this day, according to this report. And one particular group that Israel is allegedly supporting is Fersan al-Julan, or Knights of the Golan, which has around 400 fighters, and it gives them $5,000 a month, and Israel's support ensures its existence, according to the group figures. Now, the group spokesman of the Knights of Golan says, "Israel stood by our side in an heroic way. We wouldn't have survived without Israel's assistance, and he said cooperation began when the group's wounded fighters began receiving care in the Israeli hospitals. That has to stop. Mr. Manafort, in big trouble, pleaded guilty on Friday in Washington, D.C. courtroom to one count of participating in conspiracy against the United States, which involves money laundering, tax fraud, failing to file foreign bank accounts, and violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act and lying and misrepresenting to the Department of Justice. Now, the second U count, conspiracy to obstruct justice, is tied to his efforts to guide witness testimony after he was indicted last year. He's also admitted guilt in 10 outstanding counts previously filed in the Eastern District of Virginia, including 3 counts of failing to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts. These are the ones that we were talking about in the show 1 or 2 months back. He had all kinds of bank accounts in the Ukraine. 7 counts of bank fraud and also bank fraud conspiracy. Now, in July and August, Mr. Manafort stood trial on 18 counts, and he was convicted on 8 counts of tax fraud and bank fraud and failing to report the foreign bank accounts. But because of a single holdout juror, the jury hung on the other 10. Now, Andrew Weissman, a senior deputy to Mr. Mueller, walked through the charges and the criminal information for about 25 minutes this week, and then Judge Amy Berman Jackson summoned Manafort to the podium. Is what the prosecutor said an accurate representation of events? Mr. Manafort replied, it is. And he then pleaded guilty. Under the plea with special counsel Robert Mueller's team, Manafort agreed to forfeit multiple bank accounts and his properties, including an apartment in Trump's Tower, and to cooperate with investigators, including participating in interviews, providing documents, and also testifying in court. He will be the first of many. Well, he's not the first, but there will be much more of his level going forward. Canada. Cannabis entrepreneurs are running into trouble. The entrepreneurs and also the investors, as they could face a lifetime ban from America over their involvement in the industry, according to a US media report this week. A senior US border official told the news that Canadians in the burgeoning sector could be deemed inadmissible to the United States. Now, Canada is a month away from becoming the first industrialised nation to legalise recreational cannabis use. While some states allow pot use, the drug remains federally illegal. Again, that has to change. You either legalise it, all of it, or you don't. Not half and half. It's okay in this state and not in the other. But there have been concerns within Canada's growing cannabis industry for months that they may face trouble crossing the border. And in July, a Vancouver businessman was banned from entering the United States for life because he had investments in US marijuana companies. And immigration lawyers have said they have heard similar stories from clients also in the industry. They have to sort that out. Oh, the irony of this next piece. Pope Francis has urged mafia members to stop blaspheming against God and to embrace love and service. He was paying homage to Father Giuseppe Puglisi, who was shot dead by the mafia in Sicily 25 years ago. And the Pope warns our brothers and sisters that they could not believe in God and be mafiosa. Really? I'll tell you why in a minute. A reference to the fact that many mafia members are regular worshippers, and on Saturday morning the Pope addressed the faithful at Palermo's Piazza Europa and will later visit Puglisi's parish on the working class neighbourhood of Brancaccio, and the priest was renowned for working with young people to keep them away from the drugs and also the mafia. And the Pope said Sicily needed men and women of love, not men and women of honour, referring to the code mobsters used to define themselves. The irony is, it was the Roman Catholic Church that created the mafia. Oops. They are the military stroke drug running, trafficking, child slavery collectors, and have been for hundreds of years at the behest of the Roman Catholic Church. That's where the Vatican Bank got all its money from, the mafia. And here's Pope Francis now telling them to quit it, really. It won't be too long before him and his bank quits. Authorities in Brazil have seized more than $16 million worth of cash and luxury watches from a delegation accompanying Mr. Obiang, who's the Vice President of Equatorial Guinea. Reported this week, the 48-year-old, known for his lavish taste, is the son of the oil-rich Central African country's president. Now, Brazil limits people from entering the country with more than $2,400 in cash. Now, despite all the lavishness, 76% of Equatorial Guinea, 1.2 million population, live in poverty. No change there then. The president, Obiang, who is Africa's longest serving leader, and his son have been accused of misusing the country's oil revenue. They both deny any wrongdoing, and human rights groups have also accused the president of systematic repression of opponents, and his 11-man entourage travelling on a government plane which landed in Viracopos International Airport in Sao Paulo on Friday. The police found $1.5 million in cash and watches worth an estimated $15 million in 2 bags. Why would you need $15 million worth of watches? This goes back to the opening piece. This type of collection of wealth, when you've got 76% of the people living in poverty, has to stop. It just has to. So anyway, they've confiscated, I believe they've confiscated it. Another one being arrested. The 2 sons of former Egyptian President Mr. Mubarak have been arrested for alleged stock market manipulation. Alaa and Gamal Mubarak are accused of breaking stock market and central bank rules, and the case against which began against them in 2012 after their father was deposed a year before by the people. Now, the pair have been out on bail for the past 3 years, and the brothers, who deny any wrongdoing, will be appearing in court next month. The Cairo court also ordered the arrest of 3 others, and the defendants collectively face charges of embezzling 2 billion Egyptian pound, which is roughly $115 million. And both Alaa and Gamal are charged with embezzling at least 494 Egyptian pounds. And after they decided to sell the National Bank of Egypt for profit, which has left that bank bankrupt, like most others. Now, in May of 2015, Alaa and Gamal were sentenced alongside their father to 3 years in jail for embezzling at least 125 million Egyptian pounds from public money that was earmarked for maintaining presidential palaces. The sentences were already covered by the time that had already been served, but from what I gathered, they've been rearrested. Coca-Cola, best known for its caffeine-based drinks, the firm now appears to be experimenting with a different drug. Cannabis. Really. The Drinks Giants is in talks with local producer Aurora Cannabis about developing a marijuana-infused beverages. These would not aim to intoxicate consumers but to relieve pain. Yeah, right. And the firm declined to comment but said it was watching the cannabis drinks market closely. Along with many others in the beverage industry, we are closely watching the growth of non-psychoactive cannabidiol oil as an ingredient in functional wellness beverages around the world, according to Coca-Cola. So essentially Coca-Cola have gone from putting cocaine in the original drinks, which is why they would never release the ingredients to anyone. It contained cocaine. And now they want to put cannabis in these drinks. And if people really think this is being done for beneficial purposes, they really need to think again. Now, given most sodas are drank by children, do you not think that this would create issues? Would the drinks only be sold in liquor stores or just on general sale? Now, for all the benefits of cannabis, there's also a number of issues surrounding it that we have covered previously in this show, but the biggest issue we face now is it causes people to go mellow. Do you not think they know that? And they are using it at a time to stifle public reactions. These people think ahead. So why the sudden urge to legalise cannabis after being fighting everyone for the last 40, 50 years? Well, the extra tax money is one thing, but stopping an angsty public is another. Think about it. Where are we next? Typhoon Mangkhut hit Hong Kong last weekend, and we'll see the differences between their reaction and Florence. But it has raised concerns over the city's long-term ability to withstand storms, which many fear will worsen with climate change, which is a load of nonsense. But there was wind speeds of 107 miles an hour and gusts of 138 miles an hour reported, and was far more powerful than Hurricane Florence that hit the United States last weekend. Now that's the Mangkhut storm is actually the world's strongest this year to date, tore into parts of the city's dense fabric, although there were no reported deaths in Hong Kong. None. But the typhoon did breach sea defences, flood buildings, particularly in the coastal areas, blew out windows, tore off roofs, downed trees, and ominously swayed some of the high-rise apartment blocks. So what was Clinton News Network, CNN, response to this 107 mile an hour storm? They are asking that they should increase the category levels from 5 to 6 on the basis that storms will get worse this week. Really? Because I'm seeing Cat 4 portal people reporting it only being Cat 1 as forecast on MeWe last week, or a high-end tropical storm, which is what Florence was. But this time them and the insidious weather people have been caught out cheating and lying to the public. I'm sure you've all seen the videos by now where they're swaying like they're in a hurricane and people are walking past in shorts. But it's all to justify their catastrophic style predictions. The solution? Personally, I would put all weather people on TV in a wind tunnel, crank it up to 160 mile an hour winds and throw them all in and say, how's that for catastrophic? And then fill the tank 90% full of water and say, now That's really called flooding. Make them experience the fear that they're imposing on everybody else. These clowns are paid 100 and odd thousand a year just to promote fear. Category 4, Category 4, Category 4. No, it wasn't. 90 mile an hour winds is not Category 4. This could be a positive story, but I'd like someone, if they have the time, and maybe I'll look into it a bit more if I get some time, but I've got a feeling we're going to be busy this week. But this sounds like something that may help many people, particularly in America, given about $3 trillion a year is spent on drugs and medical. But healthcare providers are now sick of price gouging and drug shortages. So as a means of taking on the pharmaceutical industry, hundreds of American hospitals and healthcare workers are creating their own not-for-profit drug company. Now the company is called Civica RX and is being officially launched to help patients by addressing shortages and the high prices of life-saving medications. Now, since the initiative was announced in January this year, more than 120 health organisations, which represent about a third of the nation's hospitals, have contacted Civica RX and expressed a commitment or interest in participating with the new company. Now, the 7 organisations currently acting as the governing members of the company, including Mayo Clinic, SSM Health, Intermountain Healthcare, represent about 500 American hospitals. The US Department of Veterans Affairs will also work in consultation with Civica RX to address its particular needs. Other health systems participating with the company will be announced later this year, we are told, and several major philanthropic organisations have also joined the collaboration as a means of further supporting and safeguarding the company's not-for-profit social welfare mission. Now, the company expects to have its first products on the market as early as next year. I hope that is what it, or does exactly what it says on the tin, as they say. This is a bit of a good news story. Like we keep saying on this show, it's all about the kids. But the question was asked on this piece, what happens when the world accomplishes 1 billion acts of peace in 10 days? Well, they decided they were going to find out thanks to a global experiment called #DoItForPeace. And on tomorrow, which is the International Day of Peace, 2 global non-profits, Kids for Peace and Peace One Day, joined by the Good News Network, will launch #DoItForPeace, a worldwide campaign to ignite 1 billion people to take action for peace. Now, they will begin lighting up the world on Peace Day when 1,000 igniters complete their act of peace, share it on social media, and tagging it with #DoItForPeace, and then invite 5 friends to do the same. So by using simple math, at the end of 10 days, 1.2 billion, over 10% of the world's population, will have taken a stand for peace. And the 10-day initiative is led by 2 global non-profits with a combined 30 years of engagement in world-changing activism. Now, Kids for Peace, with its peace-building network of 10 million youths in 121 countries, developed a vision for #DoItForPeace and is the leading experiment. They are leading the experiment. Joining them will be Peace One Day, the organisation founded in 1998 by Jeremy Gilley, the British filmmaker who is the mastermind behind the United Nations' unanimous decision to adopt the first ever annual day of global ceasefire and non-violence, which is now known as Peace Day. September the 21st. Now, several dynamic events will fuel a 10-day campaign from the sea to the sky, and kids will form their own peace signs during launch events in the United States, the United Kingdom, Kenya, Pakistan, India and Australia to kick it all off. Now, the Guinness World Record holding skydivers will perform the first ever skydiving peace sign formation, and professional surfer Rob Mercado will host a peace sign on the waves. So we wish them good luck with that. IMF terrorist organisation chief Christine Lagarde has been convicted this week in her role in a controversial €400 million payment to a businessman. French judges found Mr. Lagarde guilty of negligence for failing to challenge the state arbitration payout to the friend of former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. Now, the 60-year-old, following a week-long trial in Paris, was not given any sentence and will not be punished. Really? And the Court of Justice of the Republic, a special tribunal for ministers, could have given Ms. Lagarde up to 1 year in prison and a €13,000 fine. The ruling, however, risks triggering a new leadership crisis at the IMF after Ms. Lagarde's predecessor, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, resigned in 2011 over a sexual assault scandal. It's okay for some, isn't it? Do what they like and get away with it. The IMF won't be lasting in its current format for much longer. And if they keep sending armed thugs into places, one day those armed thugs will leave with no heads on their shoulders. Another good news, a number of deaths and attacks attributed to terrorism has significantly decreased in 2017, according to a new report by the State Department's Bureau of Counter-Terrorism and Countering Violent Extremism. Now, the total number of terrorist attacks worldwide decreased by 23% compared to the previous year, and the total deaths due to terrorist attacks decreased by 27%. So the overall trend was largely due to dramatically fewer attacks and also deaths in Iraq, where the alleged US-led military coalition has helped eject ISIS from much of the country. Not quite. Last news piece before we go into a music break. Now, this is also part of an op-ed because it's getting beyond ridiculous, in my opinion, some of the things that are going on in the name of political correctness. The money that's being wasted on this and the resources are beyond a joke now. This time it's Sweden, and a Swedish university is investigating a professor for anti-feminism and transphobia after he said there are biological differences between men and women. Really. And he is being urged to retract his comments. The professor, Germund Heslow, who works at neurophysiology at Lund University, was accused by a student of making transphobic and anti-feminist statements in a lecture, but he has refused to back down. Now, during his course on heritage and environment at the leading academic institution, Mr. Heslow cited empirical research that supports the idea that there are differences between men and women which are biologically founded, and therefore genders cannot be regarded as social constructs alone. Now, the complainant suggested that Heslow's comments were at odds with the Swedish value-based value base. That's more like a bit like normal. Who decides what is normal? The government or us? Now, this value base is a concept that requires all schools in Sweden to adhere to common ethical policy, which includes uplifting values like egalitarianism, individual freedom and equality of the sexes. All sounds very good, except it's not, is it? And all this is as a Swedish church is currently pushing for a neutral gender to be applied to Jesus. Really? It's all Wells to Fargo to me. I saw it when I worked in social services briefly. Well, it wasn't briefly, it was about 6 years. And essentially what it is a bunch of stupid people with far too much time on their hands coming up with fancy words and descriptions like transphobic, asexual, metrosexual and other banal control system words under the banner of political correctness. I will tell you what is correct. A vagina equals a woman. A penis equals a man. It's just that simple. If a man wants to play with another man, fine. A woman wants to play with another woman, fine also. But why do you need a control system label to qualify what you do in your own homes or bedrooms? Put it this way, if I decided to place a camera in your bedrooms, most would rightly complain of an invasion of privacy. And yet there are people who are walking around telling the world what type of sex they prefer in their bedrooms. You can't have it both ways. And this labelling is costing an absolute fortune in both time and resources. You know, in social services, that's better. Money is better spent going on the children and the elderly. Not discussing what's politically correct or not. What you do in the privacy of your own homes is your own business. Unless you choose to video it for others to watch. Again, that's your choice. Labels are an external version of you. The real version is the internal version. And I hope people start remembering that. Who are you? Well, I am me. I'm not left or right politically, handed or brain hemisphere. I'm not defined by what job I do or what fake astrological sign I was born under. What sexuality I prefer is between me and those I choose to sleep with, and it's nobody's business, never mind what label. I'm not defined by religion, what country I was born in or currently reside in. I'm not defined by material wealth or my bank balance. I would sooner be defined by moral actions taken, being heart-centred, caring, sharing, compassionate and standing in defence of others who can't defend themselves. Put simply, I am. And that's all that matters. And ultimately, life is about what love you give, the love you receive, and the love you leave. Not bloody labels, for Christ's sake. Rant over. Well, we'll be mentioning this particular entity shortly in the Intel pieces. Q mentions a name for Hillary Clinton, and her code name is Alice, which is interesting, given that's the name of the psychotic AI that was removed a couple of years ago. So this song is all about Hillary, or Alice.